Welcome to the Hindu Daily. We're sifting through today's paper, starting right in the science section. There's a really interesting and maybe controversial proposal from the Indian Council of Medical Research, the ICMR.
That's right. They've put forward something called the Impact of Research and Innovation Scale, IRIS.
Iris, okay.
Yeah, and the basic idea is to create a single, standard way to measure the impact of all kinds of biomedical and health research.
Which sounds logical on the surface. I mean, comparing basic lab science to a big public health program must be tricky.
It really is. And that's the stated advantage of IRIS giving a common yardstick. They use these things called publication equivalents, or PEs.
PEs, right.
So it tries to move beyond just counting how many times a paper gets cited, which is, the traditional academic way.
So how does that work in practice? What kind of PE values are we talking about?
Well, a standard research paper might get 1 PE, but if your research gets cited in an official government policy, that jumps to 10 PEs.
Okay, 10 times more impact for policy relevance. That makes sense.
But then if it leads to a commercial device that's actually being used, that gets 20 PEs.
Wait, 20? So double the value of a major policy change for a commercial product.
Exactly. And that's where the criticism really starts to bite. It looks like it heavily favors commercialization over, say, public health benefits.
And there's another major issue being raised, isn't there, about the kind of research it doesn't value?
Yes, and this is a big one. Commentary, perspective pieces,
Yeah.
narrative reviews, basically the kinds of papers that often challenge existing ideas or synthesize knowledge in new ways, they get 0 PEs.
Euro.
0 impact, according to this scale.
Wow. So the example given is that famous 1977 paper introducing the biopsychosocial model, which basically reshaped a lot of thinking in medicine and psychology.
Under IRIS, that would have counted for nothing, which is frankly absurd. It really raises questions about whether the system discourages critical thinking, the kind that leads to paradigm shifts.
So you risk pushing researchers towards things that score high PEs, like commercial devices, potentially away from fundamental work or public health interventions.
That's the fear. Think about really important Indian research, like the rations trial, looking at nutrition and TB, or the home-based neonatal care studies. Hugely impactful for public health.
But they might score lower on this scale than, say, a new surgical robot.
Potentially, yes. It risks skewing priorities away from research as a public good.
So given these pretty serious concerns, what are the experts suggesting?
Transparency, mainly, and rigor. If this scale is going to decide funding in futures, it needs to be developed properly. The suggestion is maybe using something like a national-level Delphi study.
A Delphi study. Remind us what that involves.
It's a method to get structured consensus from a group of experts. They answer questionnaires anonymously in several rounds, and the facilitator feeds back the group's thinking each time.
So you gradually build agreement on things like how many PEs different impacts should get.
Exactly. It ensures the values reflect broad expert agreement, not just, an administrative decision. It needs that kind of validation.
Okay, that makes sense. So from a potential issue in valuing research, let's shift to a major global public health crisis involving chemistry and international policy, the U.S. majors list, and fentanyl precursors. India's on that list.
Yes, it is. The majors list is an annual U.S. designation for countries identified as major sources or transit points for illicit drugs heading to the States. India's inclusion, alongside countries like China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, points to its role in the supply chain.
Particularly for fentanyl precursors, right? Let's just quickly define fentanyl itself. We hear about it constantly, but what is it exactly?
It's a synthetic opioid, originally developed for severe pain management, like for cancer patients. But the illicit version is incredibly potent, around 50 times stronger than heroin.
50 times. Wow.
And that potency is why it's so deadly. It's the main driver of overdose deaths in the U.S., over 57,000 in the year leading up to August 2024, primarily fentanyl-related.
How does it actually kill?
It binds very strongly to opioid receptors in the brainstem, the part that controls breathing. It essentially shuts down the respiratory drive. Death can happen very quickly. There's an antidote, naloxone, but you have to administer it fast.
Unlike heroin from poppies or cocaine from coca, fentanyl is lab-made. Why is that so hard to control?
Well, the synthesis itself isn't super complex, chemically speaking. It uses standard organic chemistry techniques and common lab equipment. Crucially, it's made from precursor chemicals, specifically NPP and 4-ANPP.
And these precursors, they're the problem.
They're a key part of the problem, yes. These chemicals themselves have legitimate industrial uses, so they're produced and traded globally. It's hard to track them and stop them from being diverted into illicit drug production. You only need small amounts of precursor to make a large amount of fentanyl doses.
So the picture is precursors often produced in places like China and India,
That's what the U.S. reports indicate, yes. Significant production there.
then shipped, often to Mexico, where cartels actually synthesize the final fentanyl powder or press it into fake pills.
Precisely. That's the dominant supply chain model described. And we've seen recent actions targeting this, just this January. Two Indian chemical companies, Raxeter Chemicals and Athos Chemicals, were indicted by the U.S.
For exporting precursors.
Yes, allegedly knowingly exporting them for illicit use. An executive from Raxeter was even arrested in New York.
And the U.S. also used other tools, like visa bans.
Right. Visa revocations for business executives linked to these companies. It shows the U.S. is trying to put pressure directly on the source countries and companies involved in the precursor trade.
Okay, a complex international issue with tragic consequences. Let's shift regions now to West Asia. There's been a significant development between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, a formal defense pact.
Yes, this formalizes what has been decades of close, but often informal, security cooperation. It's a mutual defense treaty.
And the key clause is about collective defense.
That's the core of it. The wording is strong. Any aggression against either country shall be considered an aggression against both. It implies a commitment to joint response, backed up by new structures for intelligence sharing and military coordination.
This builds on a long history. The source even mentions that Bob Woodward book, quote,
Ah, yes. The quote attributed to MBS, the Saudi crown prince, supposedly telling Senator Lindsey Graham that if Saudi Arabia ever needed a nuclear bomb, he'd just buy one from Pakistan.
Whether literal or not, it highlights the depth of that relationship, even if the pact itself doesn't explicitly mention nuclear capabilities.
Exactly. It underscores the level of trust and reliance, particularly from the Saudi side, on Pakistan's military capabilities.
But the timing of formalizing this now seems really crucial. Why sign this specific pact at this moment?
The timing is very telling. It happened just days after Israel bombed targets in Qatar.
Qatar, which hosts Al Udeid, the huge U.S. airbase.
Precisely. For Riyadh, seeing a major U.S. ally attacked, seemingly without immediate U.S. pushback, likely reinforced a growing feeling that American security guarantees aren't as solid as they once were.
They felt something similar before, didn't they, after the attacks on their oil facilities in 2019?
Yes, the lack of a strong U.S. response then, when Iranian-backed groups attacked Aramco sites, was a major turning point. It seems Saudi Arabia concluded it needs more reliable, perhaps regional security partners. The U.S. looks like it's trying to reduce its footprint in West Asia anyway.
And the wider regional situation, especially post-October 7th and the Gaza conflict, must be feeding into this.
Absolutely. The Gaza war completely derailed the Saudi-Israeli normalization track under the Abraham Accords. Regional instability is high. You have Israel's ongoing military actions, the Houthis still launching attacks from Yemen.
So, in that context, Pakistan offers a capable Muslim-majority security partner.
That seems to be the calculation. Pakistan gets much-needed financial backing from Saudi Arabia, and Riyadh gets a committed security guarantor in a turbulent region. It's a strategic alignment driven by current geopolitical shifts.
Okay, so what are the implications for India? New Delhi has put a lot of effort into building ties with Saudi Arabia.
A huge amount of effort, yes. Focus on energy, trade, investment. But India has also maintained, let's say, a pro-Israel tilt in its foreign policy balancing act.
And the Saudi-Pakistan pact could challenge that balance.
It could be seen as a signal from Riyadh. If India leans too heavily towards Israel, Saudi Arabia is showing it can respond with a stronger pro-Pakistan tilt on the security front. If Pakistan manages to position itself as the go-to security provider in the Gulf, it could potentially diminish India's own influence and leverage in the region, which is vital for energy security and the huge Indian diaspora there.
So the takeaway for India is recognizing that the old dynamics, particularly U.S. dominance, are changing.
Exactly. It's a structural shift. India needs to navigate this carefully. Keep deepening ties with Riyadh, yes, but also maintain robust engagement with Iran and other Gulf players to promote overall stability. It requires a more complex, multi-aligned approach now.
Right. A delicate balancing act indeed. Let's turn back to domestic policy now, specifically energy. There's work being done on blending isobutanol with diesel. This comes after trying to blend ethanol with diesel didn't quite work out right.
That's correct. The Automotive Research Association of India, ARAI, is looking into isobutanol. It's an alcohol, like ethanol, often used in solvents. The key difference is why it might work where ethanol failed with diesel.
What was the problem with ethanol and diesel?
Primarily volatility. Ethanol has a very low flash point, the temperature at which its vapor can ignite. Mixing it with diesel made the fuel blend too volatile, too risky for diesel engines.
And isobutanol is different.
Yes, significantly. Isobutanol has a much higher flash point, making it safer and more stable when blended with diesel. It also mixes better. And importantly, this could provide a way to actually use some of India's massive surplus ethanol production capacity, albeit indirectly.
How so? How is isobutanol made? Can we use the same infrastructure?
Well, the good news is it uses the same feedstocks, sugarcane, molasses, grains, the stuff we use for ethanol now.
Okay.
The difference is in the fermentation. Instead of standard yeast, you need specialized microbes to convert the sugars into isobutanol.
So some changes needed at the production plants?
Some retrofitting of the fermentation and distillation units would be required, yes.
Hmm.
But the basic infrastructure is largely compatible. A plant could potentially be adapted to produce both ethanol and isobutanol. The example given is a plant making, say, 125 kiloliters of ethanol per day could also produce maybe 20 kiloliters of isobutanol.
That sounds quite promising for using domestic resources and reducing fuel imports, but are there technical challenges with actually using isobutanol in diesel engines?
Yes, there's a significant one, the cetane number.
Cetane, that's kind of the diesel equivalent of octane for gasoline, right? Measures combustion quality.
Exactly. Higher cetane means smoother, more efficient combustion. Isobutanol naturally has a lower cetane number than standard diesel.
And what does that mean for the engine?
It means lower efficiency and, more worryingly, a risk of diesel knock. That's when the fuel burns unevenly or prematurely, which can cause engine damage and reduce power.
So you need to counteract that somehow.
Correct. You need to add cetane-improving additives to the blend to bring the overall cetane number back up to acceptable levels, and that, of course, adds cost.
Any other potential issues? Mixing problems?
There might still be some miscibility issues, ensuring the isobutanol stays perfectly blended with the diesel. Consultants suggest that mixing in a small amount of biodiesel might be necessary to keep everything stable.
So where does this project stand? What's the recommended blend percentage and timeline?
The advice is cautious blend, no more than 10% isobutanol initially to protect engines. The pilot project is expected to run for about 18 months to gather data.
But if it proves successful?
It would be a major achievement. India could become the first country to commercially blend isobutanol with diesel on a large scale. Big potential for reducing emissions, cutting fuel import bills, and utilizing that surplus agricultural feedstock.
Okay, definitely want to watch. Now let's shift gears completely and head to the magazine section. Arundhati Roy has a new book, Mother Mary Comes to Me, focusing on her relationship with her mother, Mary Roy.
Yes, and it sounds like an incredibly intense and complex portrayal. Even the physical book design carries meaning.
Tell us about that, the half-dust jacket.
Right. It has photos showing time passing. But when you slip it off, apparently it reveals an image of a moth against a red background.
A moth.
Which Roy explicitly links to her childhood frightened heart and this profound fear of abandonment she felt. So right away, it signals this is going deep into personal, emotional territory.
Before we get into the relationship itself, it's important to remember who Mary Roy was in her own right. She wasn't just Arundhati Roy's mother.
Absolutely not. Mary Roy was a force. She founded a well-known alternative school in Kerala back in the 70s. But her biggest legacy is arguably her legal victory overturning the old Travancore Christian Succession Act.
That was huge, wasn't it? It denied Christian women inheritance rights.
Exactly. Her successful challenge granted property rights to Christian women in Kerala, a landmark achievement, making her a major figure in Indian women's rights history.
And yet the book portrays her as a mother in very stark terms. Brilliant, yes, but also difficult.
Difficult seems like an understatement based on the description. The book apparently depicts her as manipulative, sometimes cruel, even abusive, described at points as a downright monster.
Wow.
It talks about Mary Roy leaving her husband, the nothing man, and raising the children alone, but also about Arundhati fleeing home right after high school and having basically no contact for 7 years, during which her mother apparently never checked if she was okay.
That really casts the famous dedication in The God of Small Things in a new light.
It really does. That dedication to Mary Roy, who loves me enough to let me go. In this new book, Roy apparently admits it was a lie, a good one, but a lie nonetheless, one her mother actually enjoyed quoting as fact.
So it's a raw, perhaps painful exploration. But is there also an element of understanding or reconciliation?
It seems so. Despite the harsh portrayal, the review suggests there's also a constant tenderness in the writing, an effort to understand her mother without passing final judgment.
So, beyond the very personal story of these two remarkable, complex women, what's the broader takeaway?
The reviewer suggests it's really a commentary on Indian society and its treatment of women. Mary Roy walked out of restrictive norms, Arundhati ran further, creating new paths. The ultimate message seems to be about society needing to evolve, to grow up for its women.
A powerful message rooted in a deeply personal story. Okay, for our final piece today, we're jumping back centuries, looking at a carving in a temple in Kanchipuram.
Yes, the Vadaraja Perumal Temple. There's a 17th century carving of a horseman from the Nayaka period that tells an interesting story about foreign influence.
What's unusual about this horseman carving?
It's sort of split down the middle. One side depicts a typical South Indian king or noble, but the other side shows someone who looks distinctly foreign, wearing trousers and a tunic, maybe Portuguese, maybe Turkish,
A foreigner carved into a temple.
likely representing the foreign mercenaries, sometimes called ravutans, who were employed as soldiers, maybe even temple guards, by South Indian rulers at the time.
And the horse itself connects to a much longer history, doesn't it? India's reliance on imported horses.
Absolutely. For millennia, literally over 3,000 years, India struggled to breed high-quality war horses locally due to climate and other factors. Armies depended on imports.
And the sources differed by region?
Generally, yes. North India tended to import Vilayati horses, often Turkey breeds, overland through Central Asia. Southern kingdoms, often cut off from land routes by northern powers, relied more on Bahari horses, Arabian breeds imported by sea.
This reliance goes way back, even to Vedic times.
Oh, yes. The Rig Veda is full of references to horses, around 200 mentions. It shows how central this imported animal was from very early on. Interestingly, you don't find horse remains in Harappan sites, suggesting they arrived later with Indo-Aryan migrations or trade.
And the technology associated with horses, like chariots and riding gear, also reflects these influences.
Definitely. The light spoke-wheeled chariot, pulled by horses and carrying an archer, was a revolutionary military technology, likely imported, famously depicted with Krishna and Arjuna.
And the Kanchi carving shows later developments in writing tech?
It does. If you look at very early Buddhist art, like at Sanchi, you see riders using rudimentary toe stirrups, just a loop for the big toe.
Right.
But the Kanchi horseman has proper iron stirrups for the whole foot and a developed wooden saddle. These innovations provided much better stability and control for cavalry warfare, and they really came to India with the Turks, particularly after 1000 AD.
So the carving is like a snapshot of that technological infusion.
Exactly. It even reflected religious iconography. Images of the sun god, Surya, often show him wearing boots, likely a Kushan influence, tracing back even further to Greek depictions of Helios. This Kanchi carving is a fascinating, tangible piece of evidence showing how foreign military personnel and technology were woven into the fabric of South Indian society.
A great example of how much history can be packed into seemingly small details.
It really brings home how interconnected the subcontinent was with the wider world, especially through trade and military exchange, often in ways we don't immediately think about.
Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.